So the grass has got way too like wild long, so long I haven't cut it for ages. And part of the reason I haven't cut it for ages was that the lawnmower was broken, because a while ago I was driving along on it and I hit a tree stump and it bent the blade. So I ordered a brand new nice shiny blade for the lawnmower. I've now just taken the old one off and realised that actually it's not really the blade that's broken but the bracket that sits on top. So I've just had to go and order one of those, and I still won't be cutting the grass today. Sorry, Mrs. P. Anyway, a couple of things to pick up on. Thank you to everybody for the response to yesterday's video about the Albon move to Red Bull. Lots of you pointing out that you know, this will obviously help Red Bull to try and overhaul Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship, and absolutely, of course it will. Any driver that's going to be scoring points is going to be assisting in that process, and it's an important process, isn't it, for Red Bull? Could be worth a huge amount of money. So yes, that's absolutely a good point. Other point that somebody pointed out, a few people, is that of course Albon, he's a British Thai racing driver, so he does have that association to Thailand, where of course Red Bull is from. So there is a definite marketing side that might be beneficial, but all of that only works as long as Albon is able to deliver in the car, and that is an incredibly hard thing to do, being dropped in midway through the season with no testing. You know, the first time he'll drive that car will be in free practice on the Friday at Spa, so it's a real tough ask for him, but he's the sort of character that seems to be able to take things in his stride. So I hope that that will, you know, end up bearing fruit for him, that it will end up being a good move and not something that ends up ruining his career, which we've seen all too often. Right, I have got a couple of things to do, running around town, going to pick up things. I've got to post the latest surprise, the latest Melbourne artwork. Remember that one from the Hungarian Grand Prix is on its way to Croatia today. So well done, congratulations again, Igor Zenko. It was him who won last time out, so I'm just about to go and send that off to Croatia. These prizes have gone literally all over the world, so massive thanks again to the GP box for supplying all of those. There'll be more coming, of course, for the second half of the year, so stay tuned. I've got to do that. I've got to go and get some paperwork signed at the bank, and then I'm driving up to Northamptonshire, not far from Silverstone, to film the next part of our Wheeler Dealers Dream Car Show. I'll catch you later. Right, first stop, post office. Congratulations again, Igor Zenko. Next stop, the bank. Off to the bank. Still, by the way, running around in a hire car 2 months after my accident. Remember that? That was back in the middle of June. That is almost 2 months ago now, and still waiting for the insurance company to finalise the claim and eventually pay out on my old car, which was written off in the accident. 2 months! Right, nearly there at the hotel, and I've been thinking along the way about another piece of news that kind of got glossed over when it was released because of its timing, and that was McLaren announcing that they're doing a full-time Indycar program in 2020. Now, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but I think it's great news for so many reasons. First of all, it's exactly what Liberty need in terms of trying to introduce or encourage some crossover between IndyCar and Formula One. That is bound to happen, particularly if McLaren can have some success. And let's not forget, this time around, McLaren have partnered with an existing established team, giving them a massive advantage over what they did for the Indy 500 program alongside Carlin. So that's all great. If you think about when Fernando Alonso went to do the Indy 500 first time round, not second time, it generated massive interest over there in the States around Formula One, and I'm sure it did the same over here around IndyCar, and certainly around the Indy 500 as well. Now I know that loads of you are based in America. I know that from my analytics, who watch these videos. So I would really love to hear from you guys in America. What do you think of McLaren coming to take part in your sport? Is it perhaps part of the key to unlocking some of the potential that exists, I guess, between tapping into the two enormous sets of fans? Could it be a way of bringing drivers across? Could McLaren offer tests to some of their full-time IndyCar drivers if they think they have what it takes or a desire to get involved in Formula One? And of course, vice versa the other way. So I think so much scope for success. This will really tick a lot of boxes for Liberty. I'm sure that Liberty will have had some doing in this. They will certainly have been pushing McLaren from behind the scenes, because as we all know, Liberty have got an obsession with tapping into the American market with Formula One, and maybe this could be a way to help do it. And so the grass has got... so I've made it. I'm here at the hotel just waiting for the rest of the team to turn up before we start doing some filming, and I started editing the beginning of this video, just going back over that scene at the beginning where I was fixing the lawnmower. And I assumed that the problem was the blade, ended up turning out not being the blade, and actually it was the bracket that the blade was mounted on. So I had to look a bit deeper into the problem to find the actual problem and therefore the solution. And it started me thinking about Formula One and these 2021 regulations, and this is what I want to leave you with today and open it up for big discussion, I guess. 2021 is the big change, isn't it? It's the first big opportunity that Liberty and Formula One have to reset, to turn Formula One into what they want it to look like, to realise their vision. And in fact, I've dug out this old press release of Formula One. This came out, this press release, 6th of April 2018, so after the Bahrain Grand Prix of 2018. And it was when Liberty announced their vision for 2021, their future. The reality is that some of the things they said they wanted to achieve, they're definitely not going to achieve. Some of them, I think they were never ever able to achieve. They were unrealistic. But look, I mean, the first one, for example, with the power units. The power unit must be cheaper, simpler, louder, have more power and reduce the necessity of grid penalties. Well, I don't think that's really going to be achieved, is it? It's going to be more expensive to develop these new power units for 2021. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is that I hope that with all of this stuff that's gone on for so long now, building up towards the new regulations for 2021, with so many different parties getting involved later and later into the process, the teams, certainly the top teams, having more and more say, I hope this isn't going to end up like a situation like my lawnmower blade, where actually we start to try and fix a problem that isn't really the problem. You know, whether we miss what actually is at the very crux of whatever we decide the problem is. What is the real problem with Formula One? If we say there's a problem, the problem's got to be that it's unfair, isn't it? There's no chance of a backmarker being able to compete with a front runner, ever. It just doesn't happen anymore in Formula One. And that's because there's such a wide chasm between the front of the grid and the back of the grid. And that essentially comes down to money, doesn't it? It comes down to, in modern Formula One, it comes down to your power unit, it comes down to how much resource you've got to spend on the car, chassis development, your driver, salary, those kind of things. It says, look, we believe how you spend the money must be more decisive and important than how much you spend. So how you spend the money should be more important than how much you've got. Well, I think that's absolutely true. First of all, by the way, I absolutely agree with almost all of the principles they set out in this original document. Their vision of 2021, when they first said it, sounded incredible. But it's been diluted since then. It's been changed. It's had input from manufacturers and from teams that have meant that they've had to peg back some of those ideas, and some of those ideals that they set out to achieve are no longer going to be feasible because the teams and the manufacturers just would not agree to it. So the idea of spending your money being how you spend it more decisive than how much you spend, well, are we going to get that in 2021? They're talking about a cost cap. That's great, but it's not really going to be much of a cost cap that's going to affect the smaller teams and bring them into play, is it? You know, we're putting in a cost cap because it sounds great to be putting in a cost cap, and we've managed to sort of get the big teams to agree on a number that's not very far away from where they are right now. Why aren't we saying this is how much you can spend between top and bottom? It will level the playing field, it will bring the field closer, it'll improve the racing. Go back to the original objective. You know, it's got to be a fan-centric sport where we're delivering something that's entertaining for fans. Well, I know we've had 4 great races on the bounce. Believe me, I don't think there's too much wrong with Formula 1. But if we want to really make it future-proof, we've got to have a sport that is equitable, that is equal from front to the back of the grid, that allows any participant on a good day to have a good run at a decent result. And we haven't got that by a million miles. Are we just going to spread the field out again by introducing such a drastic set of new rules where still the big teams can massively outspend the smaller teams? And therefore, are we ever going to get a playing field that's even vaguely level? So I don't know. I don't know. A little bit like my lawnmower blade, I'm not sure that we are digging deep enough to find the real problem. I think we know the real problem, but are we addressing the real problem? Are we changing the bracket, or are we changing the blade? Tenuous link, I know. Anyway, I'd love to know your thoughts on that, because it's a big discussion, and those rules have to be published by the end of October, according to the current deadlines. Already massively late, but even at this stage, things are still being changed, they're being thrown into the mix. Things like refueling got chucked in a little while ago, didn't it? I mean, hopefully that gets chucked straight back out again, but so many new ideas still at this point coming in, so I'd love to know what you think. Are we addressing the problems with what looks like going to happen in 2021? Are we missing the point? Are we going far enough? What would you like to see? Anyway, give me a shout on all of those things, the topics that I've covered today. Quite a bit covered today in short form, hopefully. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. And if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, I'd really appreciate it if you do. Hit subscribe and you won't miss another one. I'll keep the videos coming over the summer break. And then, of course, once we get back to Belgium, we'll be back into it full time, or in full swing at least. Anyway, I've got to go and do some work now, so I'll catch you later. Ta-da.